the whole thing is a media campaign launched by Border Patrol, which mainstream media, as well as right-wing media, have picked up and carried. This is bullshit. This is the Border Patrol Union trying to manipulate media, manufacture a crisis, sway public opinion, shape public policy, and all for this specific agenda. Hundreds of thousands of hours and replays of airtime over the last 3 years when they could have exposed it for what it was 3 years ago. They could have said, this is bullshit.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Border Patrol Watch. I'm Jen Budd, former senior patrol agent, senior intelligence agent with San Diego Sector Headquarters. Marianna Trevino Wright is with me today. And I just want to mention real quick that we've kind of changed the format of the show. We really think that this moment in time is very important in our history. We want to have as much memory and availability to talk as much as possible. So we've decided to pull the video out. That would enable us to talk for a longer period of time before we have to bump up to the next platform and pay more money. And so we've decided to do this because we believe, as the title of this podcast shows, that the insurrection is on the border. And that so far, mainstream media has either decided to ignore it or they are just borrowing the footage from right-wing media and building up this foment and this anger, just like they did over January 6th. Same people involved, Mike Flynn, all these guys, Proud Boys, and so forth. Now they're on our border and on our southern border, and they've decided that they're going to take our border back and the convoy. We're going to talk about all that. And we're going to explain to you why we are in the situation that we are in right now. But first, let me say good morning to Marianna Trevino Wright. How are you doing?
Good morning, Jen. I am doing all right, safe here in deep South Texas.
Safe?
Safe?
Because what they're telling us is that you're being overwhelmed, and any kind of natural disaster kind of word that they could use, a flood of migrants. This is a tsunami of migrants is what they always say. That, by the way, is offensive, so you shouldn't say that. But at any rate, so you feel relatively safe in McAllen, Texas?
Not even relatively. As you know, I go to work on the Rio Grande River every day, and we operate programs. We're open to the public, and there's really nothing to see. Nada que ver.
I wanted to start out talking about kind of what I call like Border 101, because in doing these videos, what I've realized is so many of you confuse the different agencies that are down here, and you don't understand how they work on the border. So you're just catching snippets of the news here and there, and then just repeating what you're told. So I always want to tell people, make sure they understand the difference between CBP and Border Patrol. Department of Homeland Security is the department that CBP, Customs and Border Protection, is underneath, and then underneath CBP is Border Patrol. Yet Border Patrol is a separate agency. They just kind of sort of work with CBP sometimes on some things. And so the CBP agents are what you would think of as your customs agents at your ports of entry, whether that's a land, sea, or airport. They inspect people and they inspect goods that come across. And the Border Patrol is what I used to be. That's the people in green. They work in between the ports of entry to intercept any goods or people that are coming across without inspection. How we got here, I think one thing that Americans need to understand is that we always have people coming to our southern border. Always. The history and the culture of the southern border before white people got here, before Black people were forced to come here, was that Native peoples, Indigenous peoples traversed the border constantly. And they went with they went with the weather, they went with the animals to hunt and so forth. So that is actually part of the culture down here. And then it wasn't until the 1920s when they started the border patrol that they wanted to start limiting who could come into the United States and so forth. But fast forward to where we are now and how we got to this place. In 1994, the U.S. Border Patrol created what they call deterrence policies. And back then, that's when I was an agent. Most people who were crossing were Mexican workers, day laborers, and so forth, or they'd come over here for a season and then they'd go back home. They didn't want to stay. Deterrence policies brought walls, brought militarization, brought me out to the California border. And essentially, at the same time we were doing that we didn't tell Americans, we narrowed who could apply legally at the ports of entry. So this meant that instead of most people being able to apply at a port of entry or get work permits, we cut those down so that they couldn't. And that increased the number of people who then had to cross illegally because there were no avenues to cross legally. At the same time, we started deporting a lot of people, and those people happened to have families already in the United States. They had children that were born in America. And when you deport people like that who have established family in the United States, they, of course, will try and get back across any means necessary. They have to get back to their families and get back to their jobs and so forth. So as we're slowly limiting who can apply for asylum, the demographics of asylum seekers change. When I was an agent in the U.S. Border Patrol, the demographics, like I said, were mostly Mexican men coming to work and go back home. Now, and during the Obama administration, is when we start to see a lot of asylum seekers. We're starting to see, people coming here from Central America because of all the policies and treaties and trade stuff that we did to suck out the resources from their countries. They end up coming here. We support dictators in their countries. They end up having to come here because the gangs are out of control in their countries. And we created a lot of that situation, or at least we assisted in that. So we've known since the Obama years that this was coming. And yet the US government refuses to accept that. Asylum is a legal right. It's a legal right within United States law. And the only emergency, the only crisis that I see is that the United States fails to admit that this is a humanitarian crisis of their own creating. Part of it, at least, is of their own creating. And they just keep acting like, well, we're just not going to see people. We're just going to close the doors. We're going to limit who can come, and then they will stop crossing. But I hate to tell you, they're going to keep crossing. They're always crossing. If walls and militarization stopped any deterrence policies stopped people from illegally crossing, we wouldn't have it. We wouldn't be talking like this right now. I mean, come on, really. There's a direct correlation between limiting the amount of people who can apply legally at a port of entry for asylum and work permits and who is crossing illegally. So they're dependent upon each other. If you limit the amount of people who can apply legally at ports of entry, then the amount of people crossing illegally will go up. If you increase avenues of legal inspection, where people can come in, you can take their pictures, you can take their fingerprints, you can take their DNA, you can identify them, you know where they're going, set them up with an immigration hearing sometime in the future. God only knows when, because they're so backed up. But at least they're inspected. We know where they are. They have the opportunity to come in the United States and prove that they're going to be good citizens and be with their families. One of the things I think people need to understand is why they're seeing all this content. So part of the way they're creating content on the southern border, it's not that there aren't a lot of people crossing. There are always a lot of people crossing. And essentially, they just want to keep the cameras down here constantly. You would never know that anybody was crossing if they didn't have cameras down here constantly, if the Border Patrol Union wasn't constantly on the right-wing news media, if they didn't have the abandoned border bros down here going from, they literally every week drive from Eagle Pass to Sasabe to Lukeville to San Diego to Huckabee. They're just driving from Border Patrol outdoor camp to Border Patrol outdoor camp, showing you video. And they do that all week long. And that's all they do. And then from that, the right-wing media also has people in Eagle Pass, and they pick up on what the abandoned border bros are doing. They use that footage. They go out and get more footage. But then the mainstream media, like ABC News, CBS News, and all that, they have almost nobody down here. And so the only thing that you're seeing is from the right-wing media. And so when the Eagle Pass incident came on board with Governor Greg Abbott saying Texas has the right to guard their own borders and throwing Border Patrol out, that, as the Border Patrol Union just said, I think this morning or yesterday, they have no interest in going against the National Guard. They are for Greg Abbott. They are for the National Guard kicking out their own men and women enforcing the law. They are for leaving migrants in the river drowning because that is what they want. And the reason why they want that is because the Border Patrol Union is part of this insurrection. Right before Donald Trump left, he increased the Border Patrol Union's hours from collectively 18,000, 19,000 hours a year to like 150,000 hours a year. That's like, what, 5 times more than what they had. And even the Border Patrol complained, the management complained and said, you're taking too many agents. And he added more agents to the union that could work on it full time. And essentially, what he has done is created a PR campaign and a mass, what would you call that, Marianne? It's a mass press operation,
It's
essentially run through the Border Patrol
the
Union
Border
is what he's done.
Patrol Union is now a media operation for the
That's right.
insurrection. And yeah, I wanted you to really explain to people very clearly what this increase in union hours means.
So the way it worked is Trump gives them more hours. Trump allows them to take more Border Patrol agents who are in the field working the border and use them as union representatives. And then now these union representatives, instead of guarding the border, are actually driving around in their own unmarked Border Patrol vehicles, and they can listen to the radio because technically the press cannot listen to the radio because that's obviously encrypted in national security. And so what this has created, and this is created by Trump and the Border Patrol Union. They had to have designed this themselves. But essentially what these agents do now, instead of guarding your border, is they drive around and then with these media, right-wing media, Fox News, News Nation, OAN, all these guys, and then they tell them, oh, the guys are arresting a group over here. I'll take you where it is. Because you got to understand these media outlets, they don't know. So Border Patrol agents, we have markers, we have all sorts of ways of identifying different canyons that we know to each other. So they wouldn't know how to find us. And this idea that you can drive, I know that a lot of you think you can just drive down to the southern border, drive along the southern border and just see tons and tons of people running over that fence. It's really hard to catch somebody in the act of crossing the border illegally without like some sort of scope vision or something like that. I think in the entire time I was in the Border Patrol, and I ended up being like an acting supervisory Border Patrol agent and a senior intelligence agent. I think I had one group where I'm like just driving down the border and I happen to catch them crossing in between. They're like, oh, you know, and
It's
and it's like, aha! I mean, the border is so big and so
it,
vast and so many nooks and crannies, and it turns and it goes up mountains and down mountains and through rivers and all this other stuff. It is impossible for the media to get all of these optics without having assistance from the Border Patrol Union. And you can see right now on the Border Patrol Union's Twitter page that they are full in on this. They are saying that Joe Biden is a smuggler and all these other stuff, and they are full on turncoat Donald Trump, Donald Trump, Donald Trump, Donald Trump, the whole freaking way. They have designed this, and why nobody's investigating this insurrection on the border, I have no freaking clue, but everybody just acts like it doesn't matter.
March 11th of 2021. So this is just what, 2 months after Biden was inaugurated? Right
Yeah.
about right about 2 months after Biden was inaugurated. And he announced he was going to lift Title 42. So a local journalist sent me a video clip and she said, "What does this look like to you?" And I said, oh my gosh, it's a psyop. It's a psychological operation. It's obviously staged, and Border Patrol has organized this. This is a mass crossing of migrants, and they're lined up along the entire riverbank on the Mexico side. They've all got face masks on, not like banditos, but like, medical masks for
Surgical
COVID,
mask, yeah.
surgical masks.
Which was one of the key things you and I were like, huh?
Yeah, because if
Why are they outdoors wearing masks?
yeah,
We were
if the
like, because you
cartel
sent it to
is,
me at first, and I was like,
I know, and people on the one hand believe that the cartel is ruthless, that they don't care about these people, that they throw babies into
but
the
we're gonna
river.
make you put on a mask to get on a raft to go.
Right, but they want to protect your health and safety by giving you what is it, an R9 or whatever they were called? I don't know, the
Yeah,
the, the
I don't know,
face
some kind
mask
of.
for your health and public safety, and a life jacket. Remember?
I was like, is this a comedy routine? What is this?
So the reporter,
Some migrants wearing fur coats going across the water. You'd be like, what the
and,
fuck
and
is
like
going on?
standing out in the open where Border Patrol could see them in single file
Letting
line.
people film them and then looking at the camera and waving. I'm like, what?
I know
This is the worst operation I've ever seen. That shows you how bad they are. Oh, they were so
yeah,
mad at us when we busted them, though.
the worst human trafficker ever, is got them lined up single file, clearly visible for all of the technology. We have these ISS and raid towers and Anduril and everything, like every 2 miles on the border, and these towers can see a minimum of 10 miles. So it's like, here we are, come and get us.
So they have, like, was it Jason Jones was on the embankment filming, but then CNN was
Yeah,
on some speedboat filming with a bunch of right wingers and stuff. This
yeah.
fake crossing.
Well, and the right, okay, so the video was sent on March 11th. The local border reporter, again, these people who are being eliminated, and the people who do have insight and expertise and connections, immediately recognizes that everything about this is wrong. It's totally fishy. It's obviously staged.
Didn't the smuggler also was wearing a full ski mask, and I was like, what? I mean,
No, not just a ski mask. The smuggler is dressed like a Border Patrol Air and Marine agent. He's in
that's
the
right.
camo shirt and the green pants and the balaclava.
And he's laughing and he's smiling at the camera and he's talking to the Border Patrol agent and Jason Jones who are on the embankment. And they're talking in Border Patrol speak. That's one of the reasons why we knew it was fake.
Yeah. And that's the other thing is, so this media person sends me the video, and I'm like, where did you get this? Well, she got it from a boat captain at South Padre Island who does a lot of offshore fishing and stuff with Border Patrol agents. He's muy MAGA. But then almost immediately, the video is posted on Twitter. And it's posted by, no one in a million years would ever guess who, but it's posted by U.S. Representative Henry Cuellar, a Democrat and the second highest ranking official on the Department of Homeland Security Appropriations Committee, and one of less than a handful. At that time, he might have been the only member of Congress who had a full-time Border Patrol agent and union member on his staff. And the idiot.
So we're paying a Border Patrol agent to be on a congressman's staff?
Yes.
I forgot about all these.
And
God, your memory is so good. I forgot about how ridiculous this was.
And it's Stacey Forbes. Everybody can look this guy up. And he was his senior fellow and legislative aide, which also meant he got to attend committee hearings and review documents.
Who do these people go work for after they retire from the Border Patrol and get their pension?
They go
the
work
same people.
Yeah. They go work for the same people, like Lauren Flossman, who was the CBP border wall project manager, went to work for Cochrane Industries and helped them design and deploy these murder buoys in the river. They go work for the same people that they worked with
That they gave contracts to, and they recommended the government buy contracts or make contracts with,
when they're in
because
the
this
Border
is such a
Patrol.
great border thing.
So,
You
Jen,
know,
you're
and I mean, the murder buoys came from the Border Patrol. They came from Rodney Scott, former Chief Rodney Scott, who admitted he brought them to Texas
yeah,
because the government, the federal government said, no, this is too cruel. So,
yeah. And Scott
let's
and
go on
Flossman
over.
were buddies too. Like all of these guys at that sort of executive level, they know each other. They work together. Michael Banks was at that level. He was the patrol agent in charge of the McAllen station for U.S.
McAllen.
Border
Yeah.
Patrol. He retired and he is now Governor Abbott's border czar. All these
Yeah. So
guys are
why the
still,
FBI doesn't investigate any of this? Not that I trust the FBI to do anything about it, but I mean, you know, it's
yeah.
obviously it's clear. I've had other news media people now finally coming out. Arturo Dominguez, who's in Texas, he's with Capital Press, and he was saying the same thing. It's obvious that this is what they're doing. And Border Patrol, the Border Patrol union is working hand in hand.
Henry Cuellar or Stacey Forbes or whoever's controlling his social media puts this video out.
Yeah.
Uh, and they put it out with the audio, which is what you and I
Hmm.
were laughing so hard about, is because the guy who later puts it out is his own proprietary, trademarked content on his website that stands for booby traps, tripwires and triggers. And his website, by the way, has disappeared now, but you can use the Wayback Machine to go look for it in, March of 2021. Uh, they put this out with them talking about, ha ha ha, the guy, and they're referring to the trafficker. He's nervous as fuck. And yeah, man, he is nervous as fuck. You work with this guy before? Yeah, man, him and two or three others. They're always grade A. So what, you hook him up? Yeah. I mean,
Yeah, and then
this,
he says something that you asked me. You go, "What is he saying?" And it took us a while to hear it, but he says, "Don't worry," because the guy says, the cameraman says, "What are you going to do with all these guys afterwards?" And it's
and
obvious that the person he's talking to, even though we can't see him, is a Border Patrol agent, because he says,
they're
"We're going to
26s.
26 them. We're going
Yeah.
to 26 them." And what that means is he's going to charge them with 8 USC 1326 reentry after deport, and that's a felony. And so they set this whole thing up. And then also tell the story about CNN and the boat.
Okay, so we get this video that is just like, it's like really just unbelievable, especially that a US congressman puts it out on his Twitter talking about, like, oh my god, we're being invaded, when very clearly it is a fake, a staged, orchestrated film clip. So we start poking around more down here in McAllen, Texas, and what we find is that two GOP guys, two MAGA guys, both of whom were running for public office in McAllen, worked together with the Border Patrol union spokesperson as one of them had the nerve to direct message you that he did not work with Border Patrol on this. The only person he worked with was Chris Cabrera, the Border Patrol union spokesperson.
I know. It's like, what do you mean you didn't work with Border Patrol on this? You just said, the only person I work with on this was the Border Patrol union. I'm like, that is the Border Patrol, dumbass.
What happens is, days before March 11th, when all this is filmed, they are on Facebook talking about how they are going to be taking CNN, the communist news network, out on the river at this appointed date and time. It's pre-scheduled because, it takes time to mobilize all of these people on the other side and get your trafficker to round them up and, get them life jackets and face masks and everything. And this is a coordinated operation. So they're advertising we need a boat captain because we've got the boat and we've got the guys, and we're taking CNN out on the river to film the migrant invasion. You know, the only place they can launch this boat is at the boat ramp built by the other MAGA candidate for office behind the border wall at the McAllen pump station. And here he's built a helipad and a boat ramp for Border Patrol. And it's named the Jaime Zapata boat ramp. And this is, again, mind blowing because Jaime Zapata was a DEA agent, a federal drug enforcement agency agent who was killed in Mexico by drug traffickers. So, who do these MAGA candidates get as their boat captain to take Ed Lavandera of CNN out on the river?
Probably a drug trafficker.
What's
that guy's name?
A federally convicted drug trafficker who runs security for the pump station and the boat ramp. And his name is Raul Cruz. His prison name is Shrek.
Isn't he the guy that goes around and gets his picture taken with Greg Abbott, like he's bros with Greg Abbott or something like that?
He is a local politiquero, which is somebody who does political campaign work, get out the vote work, rallies, all of this stuff. Goes door to door, gets his friends and neighbors and all the folks at the adult daycare bust over to vote. And he does all of this for Greg Abbott and other GOP candidates. And as all of this is kind of blowing up locally, it was actually somebody in our local district attorney's office who has had repeated dealings with Shrek, who sent me all of the paperwork, his federal indictment, his conviction. This guy with two other buddies got busted moving a half ton of marijuana. And now he's given the keys to the border wall so he can go out on the river for Border Patrol. And
that's like that Aguero guy. He's running for Congress, and I guess he has priors as well. A lot of these Bannon border bros have prior criminal records. So.
Yeah, they do. Yeah. And so we're not really sure how this is going to unfold until March 13th. That was a Saturday on Aaron Burnett out front. They actually air Ed Lavandera going down the river. And lo and behold, he stumbles upon at the appointed date and time
that they agree with
the exact same trafficking that U.S. Congressman Henry Cuellar has put out on Twitter and other social media 2 days before. Only his version is filmed from the riverbank with Border Patrol and Jason Jones. And, they're even talking about, hey, welcome ashore. You hear the sirens, the Border Patrol van comes. Presumably they're like, we're going to load these guys up and take them to the station. We'll be back. And the trafficker goes, cool, man, I'm going to go keep bringing the rest of them back and forth. Now, Jen, when you were a Border Patrol agent, if you encountered a trafficker in the wild, did you say, hey, man, cool, I'm going to take these to the station and let you go back to Mexico?
Give me some more.
To bring me some more? Is that how Border Patrol is supposed to operate?
Well, now it seems to. but
cool, man.
I'm surprised agents even know how to track today. I mean, they rarely ever are tracking anybody. And when they do, it's like they got to take helicopters and horses and ATVs to catch a group of 10. I mean, it's just insane. It's insane what's going on.
I'm sharing all this with you in real time. I'm even sharing it with CNN because I have
right, because you warned them ahead of time, didn't you? You were telling me, I'm going to call CNN and warn them. And they were like, it's okay. We don't care.
Yeah, I have filmed with Ed Lavandera and other CNN personalities, on-air personalities, and I know some of their producers. And so I reach out to them by text message, phone, and email. And I've still got all of that where I tell them, do not air this. It is a setup. It is a setup. And
I thought for sure Border Patrol would say, aha, it's fake. Like, fake news, because that was all the height of fake news and this and that with Donald Trump. But they're creating the fake news. So, of course, they're not going to rat themselves out.
They created it. And the timing makes it all undeniable because As far as I can tell from my research, the first time the phrase Biden border crisis is ever uttered is the same day this was filmed, March 11th. Representative Kevin McCarthy has a press conference where he starts hammering on Biden border crisis, Biden's border crisis. This is the Biden border crisis. And again, Biden's announced he's going to lift Title 42. When this thing airs on Saturday, when CNN's like, we're gonna go with it, and they went with it because their ratings were down about 40%. So this for them wasn't a matter of what's true or false. It was a matter of what's good for us and getting eyeballs, getting more, boosting our ratings, being able to charge more for our advertising uh, slots and all of this for revenue for them. And so they air it, and boom, this stuff explodes. Like all of the Tanton Network people, the Center for Immigration Studies, and all the, FAIR, and everybody has got their Biden border crisis press release ready to go. And in less than a week, the public outcry, and the public outcry wasn't just Republicans, it was liberals, who
Mm-hmm.
watched CNN, who saw this and were like, oh my God.
But it makes the public think that it happens so often
Well,
that they
and they,
just are driving down tooling down the river and boo, there
well,
it is. But they don't know it was a setup so that they could capture it. It's
and
just
in
like,
the Ed Lavandera video, as he's cruising down the river, he does pass this one fat white guy in like khaki cargo shorts or something, in a white t-shirt, and he's ferrying, like, I don't know, two people, maybe three people across in a boat. And he's dressed just like them. He's in street clothes. That guy was a trafficker. He's bringing two people over. Maybe there were three in the boat. But then you see this one where the trafficker is dressed like a Border Patrol air and marine agent, ferrying people across, and he's got 3-4 times that many people, women and babies and everything, coming across in his boat. And then, a couple dozen more at least visible on the riverbank, lined up to come next. When you were a Border Patrol agent, did the traffickers dress like soldiers or police officers or anything like that? Did they outfit themselves in some sort of uniform or try to look different than the people they were bringing across?
no, in my day, the majority of, well, at least for migrant traffickers, they were just Mexican guides. So we didn't have, cartel wasn't in control of migrant smuggling until deterrence policies made it so expensive to cross the border that it made it profitable for the cartel to do it. But even like in smuggling drugs across the border, I've never seen a cartel member in uniform. They're
Well,
always just in regular street clothes. So
yeah, my understanding is that if Border Patrol can tell that they are the trafficker, the penalties are so much greater. That
you want
is,
to arrest them, you don't care about the migrants. You want the trafficker because that's a court case. And
and
I
that's
mean, if you know how
criminal.
to do court cases, then it's good. So, like, I knew how to do a lot of court cases, and I was interested in putting people in jail who were really bad criminals. I didn't really so much care for the migrants. I mean, less than 1%. Their Border Patrol agents, as a population, actually commit more crimes than the migrants they arrest, and I've proven that. You can
You
go to my website and see that. But so yeah, I mean, but after all this, you ended up did you contact CBP's Office of Professional Responsibility, which is like their internal affairs, or did they contact you to investigate this video?
Oh God, no, they were never going to contact me. So the first thing is, I'm harvesting everything that I can online to show that this was a coordinated operation. And the guys behind it are doing you and me all kinds of favors by providing us additional information and verifying the fact that they were part of this operation, which, they helped organize on behalf of the Border Patrol Union. And I'm sharing it with select people. And it was actually an attorney with the ACLU at the time who reached out to me and said, would you please, since you've got the goods, file the formal complaint with the Office of Professional Responsibility? And so I did. And I did that. Well, now it's almost 3 years ago.
I think what I thought was most interesting when you ended up talking to CBP's Office of Professional Responsibility, that didn't the head of investigations contact you?
Yes, I actually wound up dealing directly with Daniel Altman and then with his head of intake, Eric Petkovic.
Dan Altman, for those of you who don't know, he is the head of CBP OPR investigations, and he is the one that assigns which agents of his will do the investigation into Border Patrol misconduct and so forth. The thing you have to know about Dan Altman is he's a former Border Patrol agent. No conflict of interest there. And a lot of his staff are former CBP and Border Patrol agents. No conflict there. And and there's a reason why Border Patrol agents are rarely ever held accountable, and this is one of the reasons. But I just think it's interesting that they would have somebody that high ranking pick up the phone and call you. He's the head of investigations.
Yeah,
That seems kind of bizarre to
for
me.
me. Yeah, and we had email exchanges and telephone conversations. And the investigator that was assigned to this, his last name is Daly. It was the weirdest thing. He's conducting the investigation. Part of that was interviewing me under oath for over 2 hours in my attorney's office, and he expresses this his own confusion. He doesn't understand why he's been sent on this errand, because he normally only investigates potential criminal activity related to CBP employees that are E14 or greater.
He would be doing a higher level investigation, like.
Yeah, but he was sent
Yeah.
to investigate this.
Well, I think it's because this is, yeah, I mean, in my mind, and I think in your mind, we've always had this is the plan. This is what Donald Trump put, in motion when he gave the Border Patrol Union all of these hours. And yet nobody in the media is willing to investigate. And nobody in the Department of Justice, of course, is willing to investigate, which is par for the course. I mean, the Border Patrol had the illegal and secret cover-up teams that they ran for over 30 years. They started back in the 1980s. And when I came forward about them and stuff, they just moved them over to CBP and swept them under the rug. These guys are still doing this stuff. They're still out there protecting Border Patrol agents whenever they do commit misconduct or use of force. And I just don't see how we're going to get anybody to investigate these guys. I mean, the union itself, we already know it's illegal. It's in violation of 5 USC 7112, little b, little 6, which states that if you're designated as a security agency, which the Border Patrol and CBP now are, because Trump did it before he left office, that you cannot have a bargaining union. That's not anti-union. It's a national security issue, because if you have people in an agency like the Border Patrol with security clearances at a certain level, the president of the United States has to be able to trust that person with that information. And as we see with what the Border Patrol Union has done and what they're doing every day when they're on Fox News every day, they act like they work for Fox News and News Nation and all these people. That's what they spend their time doing. The Border Patrol didn't even get a raise. The agents didn't get a raise during the Trump administration. You know who gave the Border Patrol the biggest raise? Joe Biden. And so, I mean, it just doesn't matter what Joe Biden does or how many times he puts Mayorkas in a Border Patrol jacket and tries to pretend that they love the Border Patrol. The Border Patrol does not love you. The Border Patrol does not love Democrats. And the management in the Border Patrol has been taken over by these guys. And so the reason why the Border Patrol is doing this through their union is because legally the chief of the Border Patrol is not allowed to tell the union what to do and is not allowed to know what the union does, because obviously they're sitting there, they're there to protect the agents when they get in these misconduct allegations and so forth. But the fact of the matter is they're using it to justify, and they are working, the Border Patrol management is working with the Border Patrol union to create all these videos, all this border chaos and so forth. Let me tell you just one of the ways you can tell that this is all manufactured. Back in the 90s, we had, it's a 95, 96, we had less than 6,000 agents. For the apprehensions that we got in those years, it was like 1.5 million and then 1.6 million. That meant for the amount of agents we had on staff, if you just do a direct calculation, and I know not every agent is out there catching people, but let's just say they are, just for stats sakes. That meant that we had to catch about 23 migrants per month per agent. Today's agents, they have almost 20,000 agents. Today's agents only have to catch about 10 or 11 migrants per agent. Now, I know that when they're processing asylum seekers, that takes a little bit longer, but it doesn't take as long as it did when I was an agent and we had to do carbon copies and we had to do it on a typewriter. So give it a rest. I mean, we all know that you're slow walking this processing and making migrant lives miserable. I've had agents tell me this since the Trump years, that that's what they're doing. They're making them sit in processing centers and make them do this.
You know, we're talking about what's happening on the border with the media, the manufacturing of this crisis, and the coverage that it's getting. And, you know, you and I, with the help of a few others, uncovered and can hand you all of the evidence in this neat little package with a bow. And it's all evidence provided by the actual people involved in it, provide all the evidence that they were a part of this manufactured migrant invasion, which launches hashtag Biden border crisis. It is on a step and repeat banner that the union uses at all of their press conferences. It became the title of the GOP immigration hearings for the last 3 years. It is what they're still campaigning on when you look at everything that's been put out in the last few days with the 14 or so GOP governors who just came down here to Texas. They were in Eagle Pass yesterday on Sunday for a big press conference. Every single one of them in their press release uses Biden border crisis.
Yeah, somebody asked you whenever I talk about this or I put videos about it, they're like, well, if it's not chaos, if it's not an emergency, if it's not this, then what is it? And it's like, well, first of all, you have to understand Greg Abbott is saying that there's an invasion and it's an emergency and Texas needs to respond and protect itself. If it's such an emergency, why are we sitting around waiting for courts to decide this or that? So it's not an emergency. And what we see when this border convoy came down here, I was actually pleasantly surprised. I was warning because they were saying they were going to commit violence and this and that. Some people were. It's a lot of the same actors that were on January 6th insurrection. So I was very concerned about that. But luckily, it appears so far that there's not been much violence. But they came down with their cameras and they were like, you know, we were told that once migrants cross into the U.S., they tear up their immigration documents and their passports so that they can hide from the Border Patrol because they don't want to be caught. And I'm like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. That's how they prove their asylum, is through their documents. That's how they prove who they are. And for them to lose those or tear them up, that means that then they have to replace those documents before their court hearings, or else they won't be able to stay in the United States. I'm telling you right now, as a Border Patrol agent, as a former Border Patrol agent, the reason why you find migrants' documents and migrants' trash laying around all over the place on the southern border is not because the migrants just drop their shit when they cross the border. The Border Patrol agents, when they quote unquote apprehend asylum seekers who are essentially give ups because they just cross the border and wait, the Border Patrol agents take their documents and they tear them up and they leave them in the field. And they do that because they consider that to be deterrence policies. They know it makes it harder for them to claim asylum, and the Border Patrol agents are the ones that are creating that. And in fact, when these border convoy people got down, there's videos of them saying, quote unquote, it's not as bad as I thought. There's also videos of one woman saying, they're all standing here in line being very quiet and patient, and they all seem very nice, and they have their documents in hand, and they're waiting to be processed. Yes, Because that is the crisis. Asylum seekers are asking to be processed. And if you don't give them a legal avenue to do it at a port of entry, then they will cross the border illegally and stand there and wait for a border patrol agent.
And
So
that is
that's the truth.
that is what people who live on the borderland see and document. And one of the things I have really enjoyed is in the last, I guess, 3 or 4 years, really, with, TikTok just exploding, is that people on the borderlands are documenting this and are putting this out for the whole world to see. It is much easier to contain the quote unquote crisis, as again, these convoy people are showing now, and others, they're driving around Eagle Pass and they're like, okay, like, there's no border
You're
wall
making a
here.
stand right here at this Eagle Pass Park, but half a mile down the road, the border is completely open. And
Yeah.
then 5 miles down the road, there's a group of migrants crossing. So why are you making this stand right here where nobody is? And I think the thing that gets to me the most, though, Marianna, is like the argument then became, well, Border Patrol was trying to rescue this woman and 2 children. And then Texas National Guard comes back and says, no, 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 they were already dead. Like that's well, they were already dead, so we didn't kill them, and nobody really gives a shit about it anyhow. And it's just the dialogue that goes back and forth in the media, and then it finally gets to like mainstream media. So you're looking at NBC or CBS or something, and they're like, well, apparently Border Patrol did try and rescue them, but apparently she was already dead, so it wouldn't have helped. Like this is how much we're parsing things down to is, well, it wouldn't. I mean, it's kind of like what we do with school shootings. Well, if you make that gun illegal, it's not going to save anybody, and da 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 da. And we just keep up making these fucking excuses for everything. But this is nothing but a show that they're putting on.
It's a show, and in media, the saying is, if it bleeds, it leads. So they're always,
Zoe agrees. Zoe's mad about it too.
whether it's the front page of the newspaper or the breaking news or the story that they play every 30 minutes on CNN, it's going to be death on the border. It's going to be that horrific image of the drowned father with his daughter near Brownsville, Matamoros. It's going to be the images of the family with the child caught in the razor wire. These are the things that the media, they need it and they want it. And
I know, but even beyond that, though, Marianna, it's like you literally have Greg Abbott saying, well, we didn't cause those migrants to die. It wasn't our murder border buoys with, saw blade positioned in between them and nets underneath to make people drown. No, it wasn't that. And it wasn't our razor wire that killed them. And it wasn't our soldiers standing here with all these guns. So I don't know why you're accusing me of possibly killing these migrants and da da da. But let's be honest, our whole freaking policy since 1994 has been to push these families out to the most dangerous places to cross. And then when they die, we ignore them, we ignore their bodies and act like it's not happening and act like we are somehow not responsible.
well, yes, we ignore a lot of them, but then the ones that we do know about, we blame them for. Well, a good mother wouldn't have tried to cross the river with her baby, or a good father wouldn't have tried to cross in the desert and died of, dehydration with his child.
And yet, so many of these agents will tell you that their parents crossed that river illegally, that their parents went through a desert, and that's how they were born citizens. And so many white Americans will tell you, well, my family, we put all our kids on a rickety old ship for months and shipped them to the United States. I mean, how is that any different? So somehow the white families are heroes, but the black and brown, it's the same thing with the Ukrainians. Remember, they would show the Ukrainian children who were shipped out of Ukraine to Poland and other areas without their families. And they would have notes on them, just like the migrant children do, just like the asylum seekers do with unaccompanied children. They put notes on them and say, they have family members here. Please get my child there. I have to trust you with this. I have to stay in Ukraine because of blah, 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 blah. This happens every day on the border, probably every second on the border right now. And yet Ukrainian children were seen as being brave, and the parents were saying, oh, well, those are tough decisions, but I'm glad you did that. You're doing what you have to do to protect your country and this and that and da-da-da-da-da, and you're trying to save your children. When it comes to Black and brown migrants, those people are terrible parents. And why don't you just stay home and try and fix the problems instead of coming to our country, and on and on and on and on.
The
I wonder what the
problems,
difference there could be. It's when you look at immigration and you look at the southern border specifically, and just the level of ignorance I see, it's not even just right-wing people. It's left-wing people. It's center people. It's Marxist, communist, socialist, capitalist, all of you. All of you. I have no idea what's going on the southern border and what is normal. And as I always say, a robust and humane asylum system in a country like ours is necessary for national security. It is necessary for national security. And I don't doubt that leaders like in Russia and Iran and other places are probably happy that our southern border is like this. They love it. The fact of the matter, like I said, is we're always going to have people coming to our southern border. The choice is how we choose to deal with it. The people who are coming, the majority of the people who are coming seeking asylum, are not criminals. They are not bad people. They're just people. So although some leaders who don't like us might be happy about this, that doesn't mean that the asylum seekers themselves are part of trying to destabilize the United States. But the fact is if we allow this to destabilize us, it will destabilize us. But if we choose to create a robust and humane asylum system where people who legitimately feel that they have asylum, and yes, we need to broaden our asylum laws because they were made before we had climate change and all these other things that we've created. If we broaden that so that we can check everybody and see who's coming into our country and then help them get them situated and so forth, you can make as much money creating systems out of that as you can out of detention and so forth.
you know,
Go ahead.
the companies that profit the most from the current crisis, chaos, whatever you want to call it on the border, like Geo Group, they're already talking about how they are going to capitalize.
They're
And I
already
mean that,
lobbying.
yeah, they're already lobbying for the way that they can capitalize on a robust asylum system that would, they're identifying opportunities and they're publicizing these to their shareholders and investors.
Yeah, and it's not just Republicans, it's Democrats. Biden took more money from these surveillance and monitoring people than anybody. And let me remind you, I mean, the one thing the Border Patrol does have correct is that like what goes on the border doesn't stay on the border. These surveillance systems are going to be coming to a town near you. And when they're done with the migrants, then they'll be used to monitor us. So
That's exactly right. And it was actually 2.5 times as much money was given to the Biden campaign over the Trump campaign in 2020 by these for-profit corporations that benefit the most from the quote unquote, crisis, from the chaos on the border, which, as you and I keep saying day after day, the same thing, is contrived. It is a media circus designed for public entertainment or outrage or alarm, whatever it is that gets your eyeballs glued to the television, watching these same clips over and over again. This is
I
a
know. It starts down here with these little things, and then the right wing picks it up, and then it goes into mainstream, and then it's like it. But if people really paid attention, they would see that they're looking at Eagle Pass, Eagle Pass, Eagle Pass, or so it's like a handful of cities have a lot of migrants crossing, and the Border Patrol has the ability to move. But then in other places, like in Rio Grande Valley, where you are right now, it's really slow. The Border Patrol numbers coming out of your sector are really slow. So just because one town has a lot of migrants crossing or 5 towns. I mean, we have 9 sectors alone on the southern border. It is humongous. And one last thing I want to talk about, and then we're running long, but the bus is north. So a lot of people say, well, if it's not a crisis, how do you explain all the Democratic mayors up north? Well, I explain the Democratic mayors up north in that, like, well, let's say the mayor of New York, he's a former cop. Eric Adams is a cop. What Abbott and DeSantis and others have done with the buses north is normally when the migrants come across and they're released and paroled into the United States, you never see them. They get on buses, they get on planes, NGOs help them, volunteers help them to get where they're going from, their families help them, and they go, and you never see them. There's not 10,000 people suddenly showing up in New York City of migrants. It's buses after buses after buses after buses after buses. And then they make them stay in those shelters in specific spots. And why do they do that? Because number one, they send them to a place that they didn't want to go and they don't know where they are in the United States and they don't have any money and how to get out of there. And number two, because it gives you the optics of a large group of migrants. And that's what they want. You normally would not see this at all. You would never hear about these people. The only reason why you're seeing this is because they're putting them on a bus and containing them. And
Well,
this is all optics. This is all PR.
And I think people understood that when the bus went to Martha's Vineyard and the bus went to the vice president's home, to the Naval Observatory where Kamala Harris lives. People understood then it was a stunt. None of those migrants were like, yes, my family lives in Martha's Vineyard. I need to go there to be with my sponsor,
Right.
or, and because people were able to see that for the stunt that it was, they started sending people to Chicago,
He
Los
stopped doing.
Angeles.
Yeah, he started doing it differently because he realized, he was getting some flack and some pushback on that and so forth. So, but the other thing too is, like, if you're Chicago or New York or San Francisco or something like that, and you can't handle a few bus loads or a few plane loads of immigrants, it's like, how many people drive in and fly into New York City on any given day? I would imagine tens of thousands. So this idea that this is going to bury New York City if we keep this up and blah, 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 blah. It's like, you're being ridiculous. And so he's using this for his failures.
Remember, the whole thing is about creating alarm or
Right.
outrage. It's the same thing as the fake CNN migrant invasion.